guys, Brandon Woolham with CCM Magazine here in Nashville inside the CCM Cafe with our friend Jack Mooring. How are you?
Yeah, doing good. Thanks for having me, Brandon.
Good. So, yeah, people watching this, they might recognize the name, might recognize the face with Leland, but at that time, we're almost a decade away from that, which sounds insane.
Crazy. Can't believe it.
So let's start with just bringing us up to speed. What have the last 10 years been for you since leaving Leland?
Man, yeah, it's been amazing. It's been a wild ride, But yeah, 2014, you're right on the dot. January that year, I left the band to pastor a church. And so I've been pastoring full time since then, a few different roles. But so yeah, I cannot believe it's been a decade since I was in the Leland band, and it's really, really flown by.
Yeah, and at least part of that time that's been off, you put this together. A book that is now out. It's been out a couple days now. Well, about a week now.
Yes.
I'm going to have to read it from this because this is a long title. Portrait of God, Rediscovering the Attributes of God Through the Stories of His People.
Yes.
How does this book come about? Because this is not your normal memoir, biography kind of book that so many artists put out. This one, you might learn some stuff, and it's not just learning about your life.
Totally. So even in the band days, with Leland, it's like, you're on the road, and it's what being on the road is a very particular life. I know you've known this with working with bands over the years. Like, it is a very peculiar existence, And one good thing about it is that all the travel, I got to do a lot of reading, and I've always kind of been a nerd, anyways. I'm a book nerd, so it's like that was always my thing on the road. Like I'd watch a movie, but I'd mainly read. And over the years, it's like I loved reading about these stories of just men and women who have gone before us and served the Lord so faithfully. And so about 2018, I was serving at my parents' church in Texas, which is actually where me and Leland are from. By the way, Leland, the lead singer of the band Leland, is my little brother, the redheaded guy, for those who don't know. But so that's our hometown in Baytown. So I was serving at my parents' church there, and on staff, and I began to write, and there's a preacher who says he only has one sermon. It's just 8 hours long. It takes him 8 hours to preach, so he has to cut it up over the course of weeks. So this book is my 8-hour sermon, basically, Brendan, because it's a life message for me that that people can know what God is like. They can have a personal relationship with Him. He is a knowable God. And so in that, the long subtitle, I tell stories about people in church history, all these people that I've researched, for most of my adult life, and tell their stories, how they knew God, how they encountered God. And I think it'd be an encouragement to people.
And they're going to recognize another name on the cover here, Michael W. Smith, the guy who you've written some songs for in the past.
Yes.
How does he get involved with the foreword of this book?
Yeah, so the song I sang today, recorded, was one of them was called Sovereign Over Us. And I wrote that with a guy named Aaron Keyes and Brian Brown. They're amazing writers. But Michael recorded that song, Sovereign Over Us. And anyways, we met him through music, but I ended up marrying his daughter-in-law.
Oh, wow.
So that him writing the foreword for that book was a text that I sent my father-in-law saying, "Please, Dad-in-law, help me out here." And so they've been so kind and encouraging and supportive, and I was always sending little excerpts of the manuscript to the family, as I was writing it, and he and my mother-in-law Debbie were just a huge encouragement to me on that process.
It's awesome. So many stories over the history of religion and Christianity. I'm looking at this book. It's not very thick. I'm guessing we could fill up stories the length of this couch. How did you narrow it down to fit in about an inch?
It's a good question. So stories that resonated with me through the years of just kind of people that I found just really interesting, and their stories were encouraging to me. But also too, I start with the attributes of God. So each chapter is on an attribute of God. Like, what is God like? Like, he's full of joy. He's holy. He's loving, right? And so for each one, I picked someone who really kind of highlighted the attribute, experienced that in their life. And so that's how I picked, was kind of through that criteria. But it was hard to pick. I mean, the book could have been 4 times its size, And actually, one day I would actually like to write, more sort of biographies about these kind of people, because there's a lot more.
Yeah. You've featured so many people in here. I've just seen a short list of the stories that are in here. People are going to recognize some of these names. What's a story in this book that they're going to read and be like, whoa, I didn't know that?
Right. Well, man, there's a lot of cool stories. I think, C.S. Lewis his is probably the most famous story in all of them. But you know what? It's interesting. Even there's a lot of like unchurched people, and that, who first of all don't understand the Bible. But they certainly don't know about church history, or even like someone like C.S. Lewis. You'd be surprised how many people don't know who that is.
Yeah.
With this newer generation, so his story is just really encouraging, because I don't think people realize how much pain he went through in his life, from a young boy to through losing his wife later on in life. So there's some surprises in there, I hope, for people. But also, Fanny Crosby was really fun to write about. Just as a songwriter, she's this iconic hymn writer, but her story was really surprising. I didn't know a lot about her story, before I started really researching her. And I just kind of knew her as I knew that she was blind, and I knew that she wrote these amazing hymns. That's all I knew about her. But she had this really amazing, colorful life in a good way. She lived in New York City. She was like the city girl in a bustling, imagine being blind in New York, right? In the, the turn of the century, And so like, she had lived a really amazing life. So hers was really fun as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's a lot of struggles that are showcased in this book. It's not all happy praise.
No.
And that's kind of how the Christian music world is. Some people out there don't get to see that side.
Right.
Us living here in Nashville, our neighbors, the Christian artists, or family of the
Right.
Christian artists, we sit on their porch and we have kind of behind the scenes conversations. Some of the biggest names out there have mental breakdowns right there in front of us on their porch, and they don't know how to express it because they can't really write a song like that because they know it's not going to get radio play.
Right.
It's a stressful time to be a Christian artist sometimes, but you're going to get some of the struggles in this book, it sounds like.
Absolutely, because it's like there's some good and like exciting and encouraging stories in there, of course. But yes, like these are human beings who went through very real things. I think we need those stories right now because we live in one of the most intense times in human history. It's just crazy. As we speak right now, all kinds of craziness is going on. So, if we ever needed to be encouraged, like, hey, like we can know God in the midst of that. Life still goes on.
Yeah.
Like, I know, fill in the blank on whatever headline is freaking you out right now or causing anxiety in you. Life still goes on. We can still serve God. We can still live with joy. And so, yeah, absolutely. I tried to be as honest as possible about their stories.
Yeah. Well, we live in this era now where we only consume stuff in 90 seconds.
Yes.
So what is your 90-second pitch for somebody to read this book?
Yeah. So I think if you're discouraged right now, because I wrote this for myself because I needed encouragement, and so if you find the events of the world overwhelming right now, or if you're discouraged, if you find yourself forgetting the things that you used to know really well about God, that you were very sure about, but it's like you're having some confusion about it, I think this book will be a blessing to your life because it's about remembering who he is. We need reminders about his nature. And I think this, finally, it'll encourage you that you can actually know God just like they did. It's not just for the superheroes of the faith. It's for normal people like me and you too.
Yeah, well, it's out there now on all the digital services, and there's at least one physical copy here. Where can they pick up a copy like this for the old school folks who like to have in their hand?
Hey, well, the brick and mortar bookstores that still exist, you can get it there. So, and of course you can get online as well. But I love the physical copy. I think they actually did a great job on the actual physical book. And so, but it's also available on Audible. I narrated the audiobook. So, which was really exciting and fun, getting to go in the studio for that. So if you're more of an audiobook person, you can get it there too.
What takes more takes in the studio, recording a song or recording an audiobook? How many times did you have to read these lines?
Oh my word. It took a solid 3 days in the studio, It's exactly, it's easy, it's harder than it sounds. It's like, but it was a fun process though.
Is it just like when these artists record songs, they listen to their car and they're like, why did I release that? I should have fixed this part. Have you listened to it over and you're like, I should have read that line differently?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The guy editing it and helping kind of like direct me was really good though. He would be like, hey, why don't you reread that? And I was like, okay, sure. So he was great.
Awesome. We'll pick up the new book. Portrait of God is the short title. It's got a long title under that too. Look it up online.